Britt, I bet you're the first one here, huh?
No, there's a bunch of other people here.
Boom, boom. There we go. I just know you're just here to give me a hard time.
I'm gonna have to drive down to Colorado Springs while we do this, so I'm switching over really quick.
Okay.
Fun stuff.
Yep. So everybody else that's here, if you would in the comments section, if you are in a place where you can type in your email address, because I've got a couple of documents that I want to send everybody. Tamara, you don't have to, because I know I have yours and I see that you're in your car. I am doing this, I promise.
Hey, Ricky.
Yep.
It's Kathy Mendoza. Are you going to be recording this? Because the only reason I ask, I'm going to be dropping off probably the last 10 minutes of the hour, so I don't want to miss the last bit of it.
I believe we are. Give me just a second. Let me finish this part. And then we will, I'll take a look. I think we are.
Okay. If not, I'll catch up with somebody else in the last 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay. If all goes according to plan, we'll be doing just Q&A at that point.
Okay.
All right, anyone else? All right. All right, cool. Now you should all at least have that. Boopy doopy doo. All right, so today we're going to go through how I do my CMAs. It's going to be a pretty broad overview, but it's at least going to be a place to start. The couple pieces of advice: every time you have the opportunity, which will mostly be when you're working with a buyer and you close a buyer, ask them to send you a copy of their appraisal report. Because what you're going to want to do is you want to get it. I'm sharing my screen here. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
That's the page that you're going to want to start on, and the place that you're going to want to get really comfortable reading and understanding what it is. I'm sharing this appraisal. Never share an appraisal with anybody without your buyer's consent. This is the appraisal on the place that my girlfriend and I bought last month, so I give myself permission to share it. You'll see the address that we bought, and then you'll see the addresses that the appraiser used as comps. And then you will see all the adjustments that were used, the mathematical adjustments for square footage, and all of those kinds of things. So when you look at this on mine, here's the one we bought. Here was our sale price of 435. Here's the first comp that he used. And then just start going down and seeing, boom, 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 right? Square footage. But you're really going to want to get comfortable reading an appraisal. So ours listed at 425. We wrote a contract for 435, guaranteed full appraisal gap. This one came in at 429. So we had to bring an extra 6,000 to close, which is kind of in line with what we thought when we wrote the offer. Was I told Jen that I felt like it should appraise for somewhere between 428 and 430, and we were comfortable with that amount of cash. Right, so you can see the appraised values based on the comps you used was 431.5, 427.5, 418. You appraised ours at 429. So I wanted to make sure to show you that. Where's the other stuff at? Bam. Oh, same one. Where did we go? Let's go over here. All right. Can everyone see that now? Competitive price analysis, CMA at the top. Does everybody see that? Anyone see that, or are we still on the other page?
Yeah, we're still on the other page. I don't see it.
Yeah, let's try this. How about now?
Yep. Yes. Yep.
Got it. Okay. All right. So here's the things that I do when I start going through, and I'm going to do a property analysis. Now, in this kind of a market, again, it's just a starting line, right? But my purpose when I'm going to do a CMA and comes my opinion on a list price, I want to make sure that if the appraiser walked in the door right now, can I prove that number to an appraiser? That's always my goal. And then at the end, when I attend the appraisal, I want to make sure that I can defend and define how we got to our list price, right? And then we have conversations about how we can make up any difference between contract price and appraised value, and see if we can get it to appraise for a little bit more to make up some of that appraisal gap if we need it. The most important thing I think when polling, when you're going to do a CMA, is make sure that you're using the right comps, right? This says sold within the last 90 to 180 days and pick at least 3. I like to look at the last 90 days currently. I don't want to go back 4 months because the values are very likely way different 4 months ago than they are today. So I actually start with the last 30 days and then increase to 60 up to 90 to find the right comp home. When you're looking for the comp home, you've got to make sure it's the same type of floor plan. It's got to, if your home is a ranch, you've got to comp it to a ranch. If it's 2-story, 2-story, right? 2-story with a basement, make sure it's 2-story with a basement. You can't really comp a bi-level with a 2-story. They're just going to be, it's apples and oranges. Yes, they're both fruit, but they're different fruits, right? So make sure you're comparing apples to apples. I do start within a 1/4 mile. I will go up to 1 mile if I need to find comps. If you stretch it out to a full mile, do everything you can to make sure that your comp home is at least in the same neighborhood, right? You can't be, comping a $500,000 home if across the street there are $1.2 million homes. That won't really work. So the other thing is you want to try to find homes that are within, if you can find it, 5% of the overall square footage. If it's a 2-story with a 2-story, then that's cool. If you're within a couple hundred square feet total, try to stay within 5%. Okay. We'll talk about the square footage adjustments last because it's the one with the most math. And I like to overwhelm people and, you know, lose their attention span before we do the hard part. So the second page is a list of what current-ish adjustments are for a 4-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom, or 2-bath versus 3-bath, things like that. So the condition of the house, anywhere from 2,500 to 10,000. If you've got one that, like I've got a listing coming up here in the next couple of weeks. If it was in full sellable, top of the line condition, it would sell for probably 475. It needs some kitchen work. The appliances are fine, but the cabinets are shot. And it could use, it's not necessary, it could use some new flooring. I'm actually going to give, because I'm assuming whoever comes in is going to take out the appliances, then redo the entire kitchen and then put the appliances back. So we're actually going to list it for 425. As a general rule, every year in construction year, it's about $500. So if you've got 1996 versus 2000, everything's identical. The one built in 2000 is going to be about $2,000 more valuable, $500 per year. We'll get to the square footage. Generally speaking, an extra bedroom is worth $5,000. As long as it's a legal bedroom, meaning it's got a door, it's got a window, and it has a closet. As long as it has those 3 things, it's a bedroom, regardless of where it's located in the house, basement, main level, upstairs. But it's got to have those 3 things. If it does not have a door, a closet, and a window, then it's a non-conforming room, and the comp's a little bit different. Bathrooms, anywhere from 2,000 to 3,500. These days, I'm seeing 4,000 to 4,500 for an extra bathroom. Even if right now, it used to be, we had to break it down by piece. It used to be $750 per piece. So a full bathroom was worth $1,500 more than a half bath. A walkout basement, and I don't care if it's finished or unfinished, is worth about $15,000. So if you have 2 identical homes, one's got a sliding glass door in the basement, you can walk outside, it's worth $15,000 more. That's pushing up to about $20,000 these days if you can get one. Again, this is more of a, after the basement walkout, the basement square footage finished and all that is, we'll go through that math. Garage, $5,000 per spot, depending on the area. If you're in the upper price point, my rule of thumb is anything over $1 million, it gets closer to, excuse me, 7,500 to 10,000. So 2 identical places, one's got a one's got a 2-car, one's got a 3-car. 3-car is going to be worth $5,000 more. If you were dealing in condos, townhomes, carport 2,500, that number's pushing 3,000. Heating 2,500 to 3,500 if you're comparing baseboard water to gas or forced air. Cooling 2,250. I'm going to tell you that's really worth about $3,500. If you've got one with an AC and one without an AC, that actually pushed it up to 5,000 if needed. Most appraisers, when they come out to appraise a home, want to get to as close to contract price as possible. There are some of these things they can play with if they need to get extra cash. If they come up short, they may give up to $5,000 for an air conditioning unit, right? They've got some objectivity with certain things. Deck, if it's got a deck in the back, $2,500. Again, I would tell you that number's pushing closer to $4,000 right now. Fencing, like probably $3,000 for if it's fenced or not fenced, or if the fence is really solid versus one side needs to be replaced. Depends on the size of the fence. Again, that number they can play with a little bit if they need. Patio, $500 seems to be about right these days. Covered patio, $2,500 seems to be right. Fireplaces crack me up. I saw a listing, oh gosh, probably 5 years ago, where it was under contract. It was before we were in this kind of market. It was basically an even market. You know, buyers and sellers, nobody really had all the marbles and all the control when it came to a transaction. But I saw a fireplace, $5,000. It's crazy. Sprinkler system, again, that number is probably closer to 2,000 right now. If you got outbuildings, it depends. Totally depends on what kind of outbuilding, the side, does it have a door, does it lock? But you're going to get somewhere right around that number, probably even more in certain, if you're dealing in rural, if you're in Elizabeth or Franktown, maybe even rural Parker area. Those are generally the things that the adjustment, the things in a home that add actual value. That makes sense to everybody?
Yes.
Cool. All right. There's 2 additional worksheets that you can do a worksheet however you want to lay it out. My guess is what we have 9 people in here plus Taylor. One of you will take this and then you will build a spreadsheet. Right? I don't know which one it is, whichever one of you people are comfortable with spreadsheets. The opposite of what Ricky is. Those that know me even a little bit know if you really want Ricky to get a headache and break out of knives, just send him a spreadsheet. I don't do them. I have people for that now. Then you can build it and that's fine. You can use this kind of a chart. You can flip this one. You can lay it out similar to the appraisal page that I showed you before. However you want to do it, right? Here's how I do it. I pull the MLS sheet from the MLS system of my comp home, and I start lining out and highlighting, crossing stuff out, adding, subtracting. So at the end of it, when I'm done and I come to my price opinion, it looks like I gave a 6-year-old crayons and said, draw whatever you want on this. It's almost illegible. That's the comfort zone for me on how to do it. And I explain to my sellers, here's the comp sheet. I can make it neater if you want. The bottom line is, here's our number, right? Because I want them to see that I actually spent time on this and a lot of thought. And there's no way I could put it in a spreadsheet. If I even tried to put it in a spreadsheet, I'd probably tell sellers that their house that's worth 600,000 is really worth like 3 million because I would screw it up completely. I don't do spreadsheets ever. That's how I start my comps. Now, back in the day, I used to teach that a good comp is within 2 to 3% of the sale price. These days, I have absolutely no idea. Right? It's just a starting point. In some listings, I feel like you could close your eyes, throw a dart, and just list at that price. And the buyer's behavior and the buyer's activities and the offers that you get will really tell you what the home is worth. All right, let's go through the math real quick. In every MLS closing, when it's closed, the listing sheet will tell you what the price per square foot was. All right. You take 25% of that number and you multiply that times the difference in square footage. So everybody with me on that? That will give you the difference in square footage. Typically, I do 2 different ones. I do that one based on ground level and above. So if it's a 2-story, the main level and upstairs, right? The basement, now it depends on if it's finished or unfinished. If you're comparing finished basement with finished basement, I take the difference in square footage and I multiply that by about 16 bucks. And that will be my difference, or my difference number in value on the finished basements. Keeping in mind that if you have already used, if there is an actual basement bedroom, I'll give $5,000 credit or deduction depending on the situation. And then when I'm comparing square foot, I got to take the square footage of the bedroom out, because you can't double dip on taking, you know, $5,000 for a basement bedroom and then include it in the square footage. If it's unfinished basement to unfinished basement now, I'm giving about $7, maybe $8 depending on the area. All right, and if you guys ever come across that, let me know and I can walk you more through the square footage adjustment.
Ricky, this is Scott. What was it, 25% again?
If you look in the MLS of a closed listing of your comp home that you're using, it will show like a third of the way down the page, I think. It will show you what the sale price was, the square footage was, and then it does the math and tells you it sold for $385 per square foot. It's in every closed listing, it has to be. And I take 25% of that.
For any difference in square footage?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Now I've done all that adjusting and I've got all that math, and I say, based on this comp home, here's what the home should sell for. Right? Up until about 2 years ago, that was the price opinion that I gave to my sellers. What I do now is I go back a year and I comp the same home. Anything that sold a year ago, do the same math, figure that number out. Then I'll go back an additional year and I'll do the same thing. I'll comp what that home was worth 2 years ago. I'll comp what it's worth a year ago. And I may even go back a third year, because I want to get an idea. I want to get an idea of what that home's value has increased year over year in a crazy market like this. And I'll make sure that the number that I came to matches that 12% year over year, or 8%, or in some neighborhoods 22% year over year, whatever it is, to make sure that that makes sense when I sit down with my sellers and say, this is the price based on comps that I came to. What do you think about that? That's what I tell them. I think when you're going to sit down with somebody, and I do that before every listing appointment, right? I don't wait to get the listing or talk to them listing appointment, and I never say, hey, I'll get back to you with the price opinion. When I walk in the door, I need to know what my price opinion is for a couple of different reasons. One, I want to know when I walk in their door, does the price I have in my head make sense? Does it feel right? Or do you walk in and you're like, no, you walk the house and you're like, no, this is not worth that much. Or sometimes you walk in and you're like, yep, my number is low. I got to go back and figure out where it's low. Right? And my opinion may change when I walk in. So when I walk in, I may have a number in my head. By the time we sit down at the table together, I may have a whole different number in my head, right? Because a lot of this is what makes sense. And again, my goal when I set that price opinion is, if an appraiser walked in the door right now, can I get it to appraise for this number? That's my goal. I used to teach if you're within 2% of what it sells for, and that's a terrific CMA. That's still my goal. Although, you know, there's no way to tell, especially now because our market's changing as we're having this class because of what interest rates have done, right? Interest rates are changing buyers very, very rapidly, literally daily, right? Interest rates go up a full point in 10 days, changes your market, all right? So that's how I do mine. Who's got questions?
Ricky, yes, I've got a question regarding, you said that you like to have your price estimate at your listing appointment.
Yep.
So do you have them fill out like a questionnaire of all the different characteristics of their home in advance to you, or do you just? I don't have a form that they fill out because I'm not that organized, and I don't have Nikki, my assistant, hasn't done that yet. It is an intention of mine to get an actual form. Before I do meet with them, I'll ask that question and I write down and I take notes. I do not have a formal form, and I wish that I did. Okay. The
other thing is, for my sellers, if I can get it, and I usually get this from my sellers because, well, two reasons. Most of my clients are people that I know because of the style of lead generation that I do. They will also learn real quick that I'm not going to shut up until they've answered my question. I will literally talk them to death. For those of you who come to masterminds or any class I have, you know that I'm deeply in love with my own voice. But I want to know from the seller, what do they think the value is before I have that appointment with them? Hey, what do you think your home's worth? And I don't care where they get their opinion. I don't care anything other than what is their opinion. And I can do my CMA. Now I have my number in mind. I know what their number is. I know going in the door how that conversation is going to go when we get to pricing. If our numbers are really close together, that's a breeze. If for some reason, and this does happen upon occasion, not as much anymore, if my number is higher than theirs, I know how that conversation is going to go. And if my number is lower, significantly lower than them, I know how that conversation is going to go, right? So I'll say, hey, you know what? My price opinion and your price opinion are right in line with each other. That's easy. Or you know what? I am not crazy. I'm really good at my job, and your home is worth $25,000 more than you thought it was. And three, if their number is way higher than mine, I tell them, listen, let's arm wrestle for it. Or let's do Rochambeau, right? Rock, paper, scissors for list price, right? And they'll laugh, joke, whatever. And I'll say, here's why I feel like the number is less than yours. And I'll show them, I show them all of my math. So I've done all the math I can do. I have the right comp. I did the value today based on current comps. I went back 3 years and I did year over year growth to make sure it makes sense. And I used at least 3 comps to do that. Right. And then at least I know how that conversation is going to go. Right. And then if the real estate gods are shining down on us, we'll list for my list price and sell it for theirs. Now, let me ask you this. When I ask a seller, hey, where did you get that price from? I'm just curious. What do you think the number one most common answer is?
Zillow.
100%. I got it from Zillow. Zillow says my home is worth between 200 and 900, right? Big window. Here's your script, the script at least that I use to combat what Zillow said. So let me tell you how Zillow's algorithm works. I'm not a math major. I can't think of another way for them to do it either. They take a 5-mile circle around the property and they take into consideration everything that's sold. All the residential, all the different floor plans, if there's commercial, everything that's sold over like a 6-month period. I don't know for sure how long that period is. I believe it to be about 6 months. And they have a total square footage sold, and they have a total amount of money spent to buy that square footage. So they add up all the square footage, all of it, and all the money spent to buy that square footage. They divide the square footage into the price, and that gives them an average price per square foot. Then they multiply that times the square footage in your property, and that's the Zillow estimate. And then they usually add somewhere between 25 to 40,000 on either side of it, right? So the problem with that is they're using every piece of square footage. They're not using true comps. Although that part is getting closer. They're starting to use just residential and trying to do their best for, apples to apples. To the point, 2 things. 2016, I think, the president of Zillow, the CEO of Zillow, lived in Washington, sold his house. The Zillow estimate said 1.8, and he very happily sold his home for 1.2. That's a fact. You can Google it. I don't ever say anything to a client without either telling them this is just my opinion, or I know it's a fact and you can Google it, right? And then the number 2 thing is, it was September or October last fall, Zillow held a press conference for the sole purpose of announcing that they had finally gotten their Zillow estimates to be within 10% of the true value of the property. And they had a press conference and an office party, patted themselves on the back. because they got to within 10%. Now, my comps have been directly, I've compared your home directly to proper comps. That's how I got to my value, right? And if they're still on the fence or still on the Zillow side, then I personally explain to them that I believe, and this is true, my opinion is Zillow's a bait and switch website. They sell themselves, and they actually are a front-facing website to the consumer that will allow you to search for homes. That is true. They do that. However, their actual business plan is to collect contact information for everybody that's on Zillow and then turn around and sell it to real estate agents as leads, right? So if I want to log in and search properties and they have all my information, because I looked at homes for sale in zip code 80112, they'll take all that contact information and they'll sell it to whoever their premier agents in the zip code are and say, hey, here's a buyer lead. That's their true business model. They just sell themselves as a front-facing consumer website. They are that. That's not what they're after. So there's some bait and switch that goes on there, right? And then if they're still not on board, then I got to start, then I will take them back, as with any seller, and we're going to talk about motivation. Sorry for that. My shelf in the shower just fell down again. What's their motivation? What are they trying to accomplish? Is it they're moving? I've got clients right now, we're going to list on Friday. They're moving to Charlotte, because who doesn't want to go through the headache of moving all the way across the country? They're moving to Charlotte. They're currently scheduled to close on their new build sometime the first week in June. So they're calendar driven. They've got to hit the dates, right? They do want to sell for the most money. However, they're driven more by the dates of the calendar. Now, it just so happened with these clients that my opinion and their opinion was actually the same exact amount. So that's been easy. Had there been a difference, I would have said, listen, you think it's worth X, I believe it's worth Y. What's it going to feel like if we list for your price, can't sell it for the price that you want? A, you're going to hate me and think I suck. And two, you're not going to get to buy the new build that you guys have been under contract on for like 8 months. What's that going to look like and feel like? Right? So I'll take them to the motivation then. And then I will tell them this, and I actually need to look up the actual statistic. Britt, you may already know this. All of you may know this. NAR, the National Association of Real Estate, tells us the statistics prove that if you do a price drop on your home, like 88 or 89% of the time, you end up selling that home for less than it's actually worth, right? Because if you're a buyer and you see a home that was listed at 550 and they do a price drop to even 540, what is the first thing that goes through a buyer's mind?
Something's wrong with it.
Exactly. Actually, something's wrong with it. And now they're still going to go see it because it was only a $10,000 price drop, so it's probably not too big of a deal. They're going to go look at it and they love it, and then they're going to say to their buyer's agent, but I'm not paying full price because of this problem. The number two thing they think is we've got sellers that now have a calendar issue. So now they've got to sell for less. Either way, those buyers are not giving you full price. They're not giving you list price. So it's really important to list for the actual value of the home. There are a lot of agents who will list below because they want to drive up the number of offers. In this market, I feel like you don't have to do that, because I kind of figure I've done all my CMA. I know what I could prove to an appraiser, and I bet you we sell for more. And even in a normal, regular market that's not like the one we have now, if you underlist, the buyers will still bid each other up and buy the home for at least what the value is. The market will correct if you underlist in even a normal market.
Ricky, can I make a comment?
I would love that.
I was kind of along those lines. So when doing a CMA for a listing appointment to come up with value, I mean, right now, there's such a huge swing between actually what we're going to sell your house for versus what we're listing it for. So are you presenting this to them as, here's what I think we're going to sell? Or are you presenting it to them as, here's where I think we should list?
100% of the time, I will represent the number that I feel we should list for, because right now I have no idea what we would really sell for. And I will tell them, this is just my opinion. Here's the number that I came up with. Now, I feel like there's a good chance that we'll sell it for more. I can't guarantee it because I have no control over the buyer's market. And I do my level best never to tell any client anything that I can't control. And I can't control the buyer's market. The list price is designed to promote buyers and buyers agents to come see the home. Right? I have to tell sellers, I have to sell your home 3 times. Step 1 is we have to sell it electronically so that buyers agents and buyers will want to come see it. Then we have to actually sell the home to those buyers, which is a team effort between the sellers and me, getting the home ready, getting them most of the time to live in it without it looking like they live in it. And then third time, I got to sell that number to the appraiser. So I can show the appraiser, here's my math. Does that make sense? I'm going to assume Britt said yes.
Yeah, no, it does. I guess I'm just thinking, because when we're making the most recent comparisons, it's not always right at that. It's not always. It's hard. What I'm trying to say is it's hard to come in with a value that's accurate.
Yep.
And what, a CMA that's accurate, and then have to tell them, and the most recent comps actually sold for $40,000, $80,000, $100,000 over list price. So even though this is the number that I'm showing you, I'm actually recommending that we list lower.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's
Yep.
kind of the game of it right now, is
Yep.
all the comment. I mean.
Yep. 100% true. Couple of side notes.
So just being mindful when you go into it that way.
100% true, right? It used to be I wanted to be within 2%. Now I just want to be able to get all the showings that fill up Saturday and Sunday with the list price, and the buyers will tell you what the market value is of that home, right? And I tell them this: anybody here, an NFL fan, watch NFL games? If you do, the quarterback in Minnesota. If you don't, the quarterback in Minnesota is Kirk Cousins. He was a free agent 5 or 6 years ago. The only team to make him an offer was $84 million for 4 years, and they guaranteed it. No other team even made him an offer. Do you know what that made his market value? 31 out of 32 teams passed. That made his market value $84 million because he got one buyer to buy it. That was his market value. The buyers will tell you what the market value is, and they'll tell you what they're willing to pay. Couple of side notes real quick. Number 1, if you're going to do a CMA for a listing appointment, step 1 is you've got to order an O&E. You have to get the ownership and encumbrances for that property. I use land title to get that because it's $5 and I can handle the website. It's pretty simple, but you need that. It usually takes them 6-7 hours to get it delivered to you in terms of real time. They'll tell you within 24. But I want to know who owns it, whose names are on the title, right? And then I want to know what the encumbrances are. How much are they going to owe within a guess, because it depends on how long they've owned it. But is there a second mortgage? Is there a mechanics lien? Is there what other liens on the property, right? In this market, it's sort of not really necessary because nobody's upside down at the moment in their home. But I do want to know what those numbers look like. Is there a HELOC, right? When did they last refi? When did they last touch the loan? I had one 3 or 4 years ago. It was a good friend of mine. He and his wife, he took a job in Oregon. So they were selling their house and moving to Oregon. I was like really good friends with them, right? So we set an appointment to do a listing appointment. I knew the listing was mine no matter what. But I pulled the O&E anyway, and there were 3 names on the O&E. It was he, his wife, and a name that I didn't recognize, right? So we went to the listing appointment. I said, hey, who is this person? And his eyes got really big and he goes, crap, that's my grandma. Because when we bought the house, they'd owned it for like 8 years. They couldn't quite qualify for the loan, so grandma was a co-signer, which happens all the time, right? But that meant that grandma had to be involved in every document that we did for real estate, because they can't sell their house without signatures on the listing agreement and the offer and all of those things. Grandma at the time was 81 years old and lived in LA. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So what we did was, in that case, we were able to get a power of attorney so that he could sign for grandma. So, which we did through the title company. Every title company that you may use will be able to help you if you need a power of attorney. But can you imagine, we very likely could have gone all the way until the title work was ordered a week after, or ordered a couple of days after we went under contract, and we would have had a big problem. So always pull the O&E first.
Ricky, what if you pull the O&E and it's like an older person and their spouse has passed away? How do you do that?
And then, okay, for purposes of your question, I'm assuming like the spouse is on the title still. What they have to make sure is that they have filed a formal death certificate with the county where the house is. That's a very sensitive conversation. I have had that happen a handful of times. Once that, and it's tough to say, hey, you're going through this grief and this loss. And to me, even using the words death certificate can be rough. They have to file it with the county. Once that's done, then there are a couple of different ways that you can go about it. You can get a power of attorney, right? Or they will refile the deed in the county and take the spouse's name off. Kind of depends on maybe how much time you have. We had to go through that. My mom passed in 2014 and my dad passed in 2017. So in 2018, I had to sell their house and they were both deceased. So we had filed the death certificates and all that. So that's how you would deal with that.
So can they do that online, or do they have to actually go down to the county clerk's office?
I had no clue. We went in person and filed it both times. To be honest with you, the best person to answer that question would be whoever the title rep is for the title company that you use. So if it's land, ask Kim after she gets back from her honeymoon, marriage trip, whatever she's doing. And they'll be able to make sure that the proper stuff gets filed for you. I would assume you can do it electronically, but I don't want to speak on something that I don't know for sure. Number 2, always, always, always attend the appraisal for your listings. I don't care what you got for it. I don't care if they guaranteed. I don't care if they are cash. Always go. And you need to take your file for that home to give to the appraiser, right? You want to show them which comps you used. You want to take a copy of the county records that show this is the square footage, this is the type of building, this is how many bedrooms, bathrooms, basically the one-page book report on the house and what it is. If you can find a drawing or a rendering of the property, a floor plan, take that. I take the full contract, whichever one they're under contract with, all 23 pages. I take that. I take print out a copy of section 4 of every other contract that we received that shows how much money that buyer bought or offered. I don't care how many it is, I take that. I feel like I'm missing a couple of things. I'm in the wrong office. I have a copy of the 10 things to take sitting in the wall of my office at the market center. Britt, what else am I missing to take in your appraisal package? Take the MLS listing sheet that you have, along with a copy of the MLS for all of the comps.
Yeah. Comps, all other offers, or not even necessarily all offers if they're lower. I'm driving also, so and the other thing I wanted to ask you, as things have changed so much, I would recommend, do you bring your entire CMA to the appraiser?
Yes, I do. Some appraisers appreciate it. Some will literally take my folder and throw it in the trash can before they leave. And some will just take it and not do anything with it. My goal with that package is just to defend how I got to where I'm at.
So one thing that I would mention, or that I would recommend, and this is, everybody knows that different agents do business differently. This is just my perspective.
Yep.
So when presenting comps or some sort of a CMA to an appraiser, especially right now with the way that things are and how much things change, I mean, I would not give them my specific math. I would give them a workup that says positive adjustment for this, negative adjustment for that, and not give an actual number, because human bias, they could think that you're just full of it and you're a stupid agent that has no idea what they're doing, and then they just want to argue with you to argue with you.
Sure.
Or it's going to sway them in some way that could actually end up being a negative effect, because if you, I mean, most of your numbers that you went through feel pretty accurate.
Brett, you're Darth Vadering us.
See them changing a ton. So, I mean, just like even now, we don't, sorry. Can you hear me?
You're cutting out like Darth Vader with just a higher pitched voice.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know what the female version of Darth would be. Otherwise, that's what you sound like. So
maybe I'll just stop talking.
that would be a first, Britt. I still tell them the number that I had, because I just want them to know what it was. And I want them to know, I want to be able to defend that number. I want them to know that I didn't just pick it out of thin air. So my personal perspective is I'm still going to tell them. And then I'm going to say, hey, if that's way out of line, as you're doing your gig here, let me know where I'm crazy, right? Because my intention is, as is everything I ever do in real estate, at that appraisal, which generally takes maybe as little as 10 minutes, I've stood there for an hour and talked with appraisers before, because my goal is to learn at least one thing from that process that I can add into either my CMA or my transaction process, or for the next appraisal that I go to. I want to learn something. And again, I will tell them very specifically, I have no idea how accurate this number is. This is just how we got to that number. Just defend how we got there. I'm not telling them this is the value of the home, right? That is literally their job. That is literally why they're there, right? And to that point, the qualifications that you have to be an appraiser are insane. Did you know that to be an appraiser, you have to have a 4-year college degree? If you didn't go to college for 4 years and get a degree, you cannot be an appraiser in the state of Colorado. Right? And then I believe I just found this out last week. They've changed this. You have to have 1,500 volunteer hours, if you will, before they'll give you your certification. It used to be 2,000. So you have to have an appraiser that will follow you around, and you're their apprentice for 1,500 hours. Now, I don't know about y'all, but as I look back when I was a kid in elementary school, and every year we had career day where some parents would come in and talk about their careers, never once do I remember an appraiser coming in. Never once when the teacher said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Nobody ever said, I want to be an appraiser. There are less than 1,600 licensed appraisers in our state. Most of them, frankly, are crotchety old men, right? I can't imagine how grumpy I would be if I'd been an appraiser for 30 years and having the vast majority of realtors yell at me and tell me I suck and tell me I don't know what I'm doing because I appraised their home for, you know, $3 less than what it's under contract for or whatever. So that's sort of who we're going to be. There's a class. I went to Armbrust Real Estate School when I got my license a decade ago. He actually has a class called Coffee and Donuts, which is literally how to attend an appraisal and bring coffee and bring donuts, right? These days, it may be better to bring, I don't know, insure, you know, and like whatever, because you're going to get a crotchety old guy, more than likely. Yep. Now,
Ricky, I have another question for you when you're done.
No, I'm done. That's it. They're just going to get a crotchety old man.
Okay. Two questions, actually. I went to show a couple a home on Saturday, and the listing agent had a binder of, you know, who made the home because it was actually turned out to be a modular home. Mm-hmm. But she also had her CMAs in the binder, mm-hmm. and we could see that she hadn't compared the modular homes. She had compared to all just regular foundation homes.
Yep.
And I wasn't really sure, because for me, I would think I'd want it compared to a modular home, not to regular homes.
Yep.
And so
I would too, if you can find the comps.
Right. So she had the comps there, but then also, is that a wise idea to have your comps in the binder when you're listing a house for everybody to see?
I wouldn't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with buyers agents and buyers coming in and saying, here's the CMA, here's where we got to this list price. I'd be perfectly fine with that. The binder is a good idea. You can purchase what's called a home book from your title company. I have no idea what they cost anymore. I haven't bought one in a couple of years. They used to be $50. It was a very professionally put together binder that was everything about the home that they could come up with, the neighborhood, the schools, everything about the neighborhood. And I would have no problem having putting my CMA in there. What?
They have all the neighbors' information too. It's kind of weird.
There is a little bit of creepy stuff though. They don't put anything in there really that's not Googleable, which is a cool thing. That's my thing I learned from teaching today. I learned that Googleable is a word. I had a listing one time where I did the CMA. I came to 525, but I was really not confident. So I actually had my buyer do a pre-appraisal. They hired an appraiser to come in and give them a formal appraisal, which showed 525, right? I have the home book there and I marketed. I have an appraisal in hand for 525. We could not sell it. Could not sell it. So I sat down with my mentor and we went through everything, and she said she wanted to go see the house. So I took her over to see the house. She had put the home book, she went through the home book, and she was like, Ricky, you're missing the thing that sells this home. It's not in any of your marketing, nothing. It's it's almost the perfect combination of elementary, middle school, and high school in the Cherry Creek School District. It was Cherry Creek High School, and then what's the middle school on the same campus? Is it actually Campus Middle School? And then the elementary school. She said it's the perfect trifecta. What sells this house is the schools. So I drove around to the 3 schools and I took a picture of the front, put them together, made a collage, 8.5 by 11, and made that the cover photo of the home book sitting on the counter. And we sold it 2 days later. So the home book could be a good deal, right? And make sure in your marketing that you're doing everything you can to identify and really focus on what sells this house. If you can't figure it out, well, I do this with every one of them. I ask my sellers, when you bought this house, why'd you buy this one? Had I done that with that seller, 100%, they would have said the schools are fantastic and I would have known to market the schools. And generally speaking, you can figure it out. It's one of the reasons why new agents should be previewing 10 homes a day, or 10 homes a week, sorry. Just go preview and walk through them so that you can start practicing identifying what sells this house, because that's what you want to focus the photos on.
That's am I Darth Vadering still?
No, you're
Okay.
good now.
That's another thing. I mean, to include in a CMA, if you're getting super granular, making sure that you're paying attention to positive or negative externalities and speaking to those when you talk to the appraiser. Like Google Map it or Google Earth it, or like Ricky said, drive the neighborhood. But I always pull up the Google Earth view of a home to see if there are telephone poles that maybe I didn't notice, if there are railroad tracks, anything like that, if it backs to a green belt versus, you know, backing to a grocery store, whatever. Those are huge impacts and value, and that's going to actually be an adjustment on the appraiser's report.
Yep. So a lot, maybe it's the kitchen, maybe it's the yard, right? But find out what the thing is that sells that home, and that should be very much focused in your marketing.
And the one thing I was trying to say earlier before I got cut out was we don't see nearly as much of an adjustment anymore for home condition. Condition used to be a big deal. So you'll see on the appraiser's report, it's C1, C2, C3, C4, C5.
Yep.
I think, is it C6, Ricky? Is that C6 is poor condition, C5 is fair.
I think it's
C4,
flipped. I feel like it's flipped. Like
no.
C6 is the top of the line, brand new.
C1 is new build.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
C1 is new build, and C6 is poor condition.
Yep. And the vast majority of the homes that we work with are going to be C3s or C4s.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. But it would be, C4 would typically be average, and then a C3 is upgraded. C2 is significantly upgraded. C1 is brand new. But again, you won't see, there used to be significant adjustments made for those types of things if they had to choose a comparable sale with different condition. And now you really don't see it. So I would just say, don't lean too heavily on that. And generally speaking, nowadays, if you're having an issue coming up, if you're looking at your number and you're like, this doesn't make sense, it's probably not due to upgrades. It probably is due to a negative or positive externality.
Yep, for sure. Cool. Any other questions? Sorry, Britt.
Oh, no. Go ahead. I was sorry.
Just asking for questions.
I was supposed to mute.
Hey, Ricky, just one quick question.
Sure.
When you're compiling your CMA, your comps, looking at the sold properties, do you also look at the ones that are currently showing active for conversation, you know?
Yep. I will look at that. I will look at pendings.
Okay.
And I may call the listing agent on that and ask them if they are at a point in the transaction where they're willing to share their contract price. Probably only successful 33% of the time. But they'll tell me significantly over list, right? Or at list, you know. So I'll do what I can if I really feel like I'm struggling to come up with a value.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing that I think is really, really important is find someone in the office who does CMAs at a really high level that you really trust. And if you ever have questions, call that person. I've got mine. I know who I call 90% of the time if I've got a value question, like a true home value question. Britt is fantastic. I'm terrified that if I'm off or I can't figure it out, I don't want to call Britt and say, hey, I'm stupid. What's the value of this house? So I have a just regular old practicing agent that I call because she won't make me feel stupid. And I'm afraid to share with Britt that I don't know what I'm doing. And last, if you need to, throw a dart, list at that price, and the market will tell you what that home is worth, right? And then I tell my sellers this last thing: listen, whatever the list price ends up being, whoever the decision makers are need to have a conversation and come to an understanding of what's the bottom line number you would accept. And do not tell me what that number is until it comes to a point where maybe I have to ask, right? Because I think if they tell me, you know, we want to list for 5, we're willing to take 480, I don't want to know that, because then I feel like me by nature, I will start negotiating to the 480 price. I don't want to do that. I want to negotiate to the $500,000 price. And then if it comes to it, hey, what's that number that you and your wife or you and your husband decided on? So that's sort of the insurance if we get an offer below list. The other thing I would tell you is in this market, Britt was sharing this morning in our mastermind, she got one under contract this week. They were the only offer. So don't be afraid to write an offer for list price. Unless you know there were, 84 showings over the weekend and they've got 9 offers, right? Try to get that information from the listing agent, but the market's changing. I don't know how long it'll be before we get back to an average days on market of 43 or 48, like it was when I started. Maybe never, right? Colorado's a destination state and we're running out of space really quickly to buy and build stuff on. So, all right, cool. If you ladies ever have any questions, you know how to reach me. I'm on Facebook. I think a lot of you should have my email address now and my phone. Ricky doesn't hide. I'm not hard to find.
Ricky's on TikTok.
Ricky is on TikTok.
Also.
I am. Yep. Jimmy Austin went viral with the video he did a week and a half ago. It's crazy.
Yeah.
TikTok's hilarious. Can be offensive in certain times. And for the record, Britt's on TikTok too. And she's currently more successful than I am. All right, ladies, if you ever have any questions, you know where to reach me.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you all later.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
all welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.